Namaskar. Welcome to this new session. Uh, there are a few more questions to be dealt with. On one of the question which was not sufficiently covered in the last session due to time constraint, so that will be taken up. The question was about the fact that today we believe that yoga is for one and all, and our yoga is asana pranayam. In the modern times, so the neo yoga is of the nature of asana pranayam, and then it is said that propagators of yoga have said this emphatically, unanimously, that yoga is for one and all. Well, that is what impression we are given today by the propagators of yoga in our times. In some other times, earlier times, that was not the case. Yoga was not propagated as something for one and all. It is only in our times when yoga has become profession. Naturally, the professional people had to be advocating that. But in Bhagavad Gita's time, you will recall, Manushyanam Sahasreshu. It is among the thousands of people, one of them took to yoga. And some of the wise people have said that amongst thousands and thousands and millions of people, one of them will take up to yoga. Out of thousands who take up to yoga, thousands and thousands who take up to yoga, one of them will really commence. Out of thousands who have commenced, out of thousands and thousands who have commenced, one of them will earnestly pursue. And amongst the thousands and thousands who have pursued, one of them will continue throughout. And one of the thousands and thousands who continue throughout, one of them will really understand it essentially. And then one of the thousands and thousands and thousands who understand it essentially, for them yoga will fructify. And when it fructifies, it will fructify in some other eon, some other era. And therefore, one will really not know what is really fruit of yoga. Anyway, the point is, today we are indoctrinated to the fact that yoga is for one and all. Anyone, everyone, any Tom, Dick and Harry can take up to yoga. What is it that it makes anyone and everyone take up to yoga? Well, there are so many channels of practicing yoga, so many processes of practicing yoga, so many channels to pursue yoga. Generally, if you see, there are few people who are kinetic people, activity holistic people. That means workaholic people, like we say somebody is workaholic, somebody is activity holic. And they believe in incessant activity. Like we say, young, boiling with enthusiasm. Some people are like that. And boiling for enthusiasm to be active. So there are action-holic people. So there is something for action-holic people to pursue in yoga. There is a way that you can pursue yoga that way, being action-holic. Some people are fight-holic people. They want to be fighting. They want to be fighting for everything, anything. If not, they will create a fight and fight it out. Fight-holic people. There are fight-holic people. So there are action-holic people, there are fight-holic people. And they will have pursuit of yoga to be fighting with oneself. Then there are some people who are nivrutti margi people, passivity-holic people. They want just passivity. They want to be passive. They don't believe in doing and doing and doing and dying. They want to just be passively doing something or to be having a very passive life, sedate life. And they are called nivrutti margi people. So there is a way in yoga that you can be nivrutti margi, you can be renunciate, you can be ascetic, you can be giving up all kind of activity, and you just want to be passive. So there are passivity-holic people. There are knowledge-holic people. If some people are bubbling with activity potential, some people are boiling with knowledge potential. They just want to be knowing, knowledge pursuit. So for such people also, there is a way to pursue yoga. So we have basic tendencies in mankind, different basic tendencies in mankind, and they will be able to pursue their yoga which is suitable to their basic nature. So as I just now listed out, action-holic people, passivity-holic people, knowledge-holic people. So they will be having a way to devise and customize yoga. It is already devised and customized for various kinds of people. Some people have health as priority. So they will pursue yoga which is suitable to their taste. Some people are over-conscious about their forms of the body, form and figure of their body. And they will also be praising yoga. And we see that in present world, that there are some people who, by profession, by nature, they are body conscious, form conscious, figure conscious, what you call as model people. They will be modeling for in different advertisements and etc. in the industry itself, modeling industry. They are trying to keep themselves trim, fit in form and figure, and there is a way for them to pursue yoga. That's why those people also are seen pursuing yoga. Well, some people just believe that the beauty lies in mind and not in body. So there are some who believe that the beauty lies in body, so they try to have their own, the yoga suitable to their taste. There are some people who believe that the beauty lies in mind and consciousness and psyche, and they will have their own way of going about in yoga. Basically, mankind is really prismatic. Unlike the subhuman species, we know that something is called as dog's tendency, something is called as cat's tendency, something is called as tiger's tendency, lion's tendency, elephant tendency. So they have their tendency, a framework, and usually we don't see the animals going out of their framework of tendencies. But there is nothing like human tendency, if I may say so, in one perspective, if you see, that you have human beings of various traits, various tendencies, various priorities, various traits. So all these kind of traits, etc., we see in human beings. We don't see so many different traits in particular biological species, such as cats, such as dogs, such as camels, such as monkeys, such as we don't see much. A monkey is a monkey, so they have a frame and they live within a frame. They have been living within the frame for millennia after millennia. Is the man the same millennia after millennia? Man is not same even century after century. Why that much? Why you don't see that the man is not same generation after generation? Every 25, 30 years, we see radical change in human psyche, human approach, human gravities, human pursuits, human likes and dislikes. So the options for mankind is really enormous, endless. So in yoga, they will find that there is something suitable for their own trait. There is something suitable for their own makeup. There is something suitable for their own priority. That is why today we have concept of 20 minutes yoga. There are many people who cannot be sparing time for anything like that, which is for lifestyle or so-called lifestyle. For them, it is possible that there is yoga of 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes per day. There are some who believe that yoga is for lives after lives after lives after lives after lives. Where is 15 minutes per day and where is lives after lives in yoga? So it is very difficult to characterize human being. And yoga is there or yoga can be devised and customized to be suitable for people of different tastes, different gravities, different priorities. So that is why yoga is said to be for one and all. The other day I ventured to take a class where I was taking same asanas, and I said those who are young, exercise minded, exercise crazy, because today yoga is exercise. Yoga is for health and yoga is taken to be a form of exercise which is good for health. You can have various radia for what is health. So you can have satisfaction or satisfactory yoga for your radius of yoga, which is for health. So I said the youngsters can be going for exercising. Youngsters are modern time youngsters are interested in burning calories. Do you mean to say that your ancestors who were young were keen on burning calories? Remote ancestors, they did not bother about burning calories. But today's youngsters, we find that they want to burn calories. They want to perform physical feats, exercise mindedness, exercise kinetic conditions. So I said they can devise the asana. It is possible to devise the asana, constitute an asana for that need that they want to burn calories, and then go for exercising the body matter. Exercise the corporeal body, exercise the cellular body, exercise the material body. There is nothing wrong in that. It is a good thing to be exercising material body because our body matter is such that it needs to be exercised. Now, how much to exercise is one's choice. So, physiocratic people will try to exercise enormously, which for other people it might be overdoing. For some it might be underdoing. Somebody does and a group of people say this is overdoing. And for the same doing, another group of people will say this is underdoing. Anyway, so I said youngsters can be doing that asana to exercise the corporeal body matter, muscles, bones, tissues, joints, cellular body. They can exercise the cellular body. They can exercise the surface mind. They can exercise the surface breath and breathing. So, in particular stage of life, and we see that generally that children have identical tendencies. So, in one parameter, we say children have one tendency, youngsters have another tendency. So, we try to have a framework for children, teenagers, the youth, the adults, the middle-aged, the senior citizen, old-aged people, very old-aged people, etc., etc. But we know still there is a flexibility. But generally, there is a frame that you can give to people of different stages in life. So I said these asana, youngsters can be doing that way, exercising in asanas. Exercisively do pranayam. How long can I inhale? How much can I inhale? How much can I exhale? How long can I exhale? How much can I retain? How long can I retain? So they can perform those feats. That is possible in yoga. But then there are some people who are feeble, weak on account of maladies, diseases, problems. So I said same asana can work as a remedy. So find out how you can get relief from the symptoms of diseases, conditions of diseases, pathology of diseases, biochemistry of diseases. So there can be a remedial mode in the same asana. Now their priority is to mitigate the symptoms with which they suffer. And therefore they can devise the same asana suitable to their goal. While there are some people who are senior citizens who just want to see that they are keeping themselves active throughout the life. So they just want to have activity, that they can be keeping their limbs active, they can be keeping their body active, they can be keeping their mind active. They can keep at bay the senile changes which come in old age, etc. So they want to be active physically, mentally, intellectually, etc. So they want to be active. So they can devise and customize the same asana that way. So these people, senior citizens or very aged people, they want tonic, they want energies, they want energy restoration, energy collection, energy built up. They want the energy to be built up even when they are old. They do not want the energy which is dissipating at a rapid rate and fast rate because of the aged condition, because of aging. So they can be using the same asana to build up energy levels, to maintain energy levels and build up energy levels, while the youngsters will be exhausting energies. They look for what in physical culture it is called workout. So they will look to profusely perspire, get exhausted. What is it? That means they are expending energy. They want to expend energy because there is exuberance of energy in strong young people. And only when they expend the energy, they will be building the energy. That's how the stage of life is. That unless you expend your energies, you won't build up the energy. So if you rightly expend your energy, you will build up energy at a premium. While the very old people don't want to expend energy, though they know that it's in very scarce, a huge scarcity. They want to maintain it. They want to even build up. So the old people will be doing same asana, which is a tonic for them. So the people with malady, will diseases, will try to find remedies. They will try to have remedy out of their yoga, and that's why we say yoga is for health. And it is claimed by every teacher of the modern times that yoga is a wonderful therapy and you can have solutions to your problems of health. So that means there is a pharmacology, there is a medicine turned out, there is a remedy turned out, relief turned out, and then you overcome your diseased condition. You become disease free. So then understand how the dynamics of asana would be when it is trying to do some repair work, counter diseased conditions, and then a younger generation which is trying to burn out calories. They want to have wonderful workout. What are they doing? They are expending energy. They want a channel to expend the energy constructively so that it reaps dividends. Expending money and merely expending it is not wise. If expenditure is an investment, then you know that is what a pragmatic, wise man would opt for. So youngsters want to expend energy which will pay dividends. That is also possible. So one and the same set of asanas could be done with different dynamics. So yoga is our yoga, modern type yoga, which is asana, pranayama, etc. It is really multifaceted, and you can opt for a suitable process of it and use it constructively in one's sense of judgment. So that's why yoga has that appeal. Then yoga also can be learned for an intellectual pursuit. Like intelligent people are asked to solve mathematical problems. If you are intelligent, you are advised to pursue mathematics because that will build up intelligence, that will help you use the intelligence, apply the intelligence, exercise the intelligence, and develop the intelligence. So there are aspects in yoga where you can have intellectual pursuit, intellectual discoveries, intellectual explorations. Food for intelligence can be there. So from food for body matter to food for intelligence matter, food for mind matter, food for emotional matter, everything is possible provided you understand constitution of yoga. Because man wants emotional food, man wants mental food, man wants sensory food, man wants intellectual food, mind wants identity food. One's identity, one needs food for that, nutrients for one's own identity. So from body matter to multifaceted mind matter, you can opt for various channels suitable to you. Now some people want to be reforming themselves. So there is something for you to reform. Some people want to maintain what they have. They don't want that to slip away. Like for a beauty for a young girl, or that beauty of appearance for a young man, they don't want that to let go. They don't want that to slip away. So they want to maintain. Maintaining that becomes their priority. If possible, build it. Build it or maintain it, but not lose it. So they have particular pursue kind of pursuit in life because they want to maintain. There are some people who want to reform. They want to evolve. They want to evolve in physical characters to mental characters. We do not know what really man looks after or is sought after by a man. And yoga will offer all those things. One should know how to customize it. That's why yoga is a inner engineering subject. You must be able to engineer what you deem fit for you, good for you, well for you. You need to be knowing the inner engineering of yoga, then you can customize and devise it. And that is why yoga can be for one and all. Some people have weakness in their faculties, weakness in their mind aspects. They want to develop that. So if you want to develop, you can do yoga. If your development is a priority, you can have something in yoga. You can devise, customize yoga for you. If you want to maintain, which becomes a priority, what you have is a glorious thing for you, and you think you must maintain it, you must have it, you must have it lifelong, you must not lose it. That becomes a priority. Then there is another way, another culture, another dimension to pursue yoga. So if you don't have, you want to have it. That's one kind of pursuit. You have it and then you want to maintain it, another kind of pursuit. So either you don't have it or you have it. When you don't have it, you want to have it. When you have it, you want to maintain it, build it up, etc. So yoga can be devised and customized. That's why it has open architecture. And that's why yoga can be for one and all. If the health is priority, yoga will come good. If physical health is priority, yoga will come good. If the mental health is priority, yoga will come good. If you want to have the maintenance as a major priority, there is a way for yoga. If you want to evolve, build up on something that you have it, then there is a way to go about. And that is why then it is perfectly right that the modern yogis gave this kind of indoctrination that yoga is for one and all. So that was one aspect which I had not answered in my last session, which I did. So there is the answer to that question, of course, for time being. Now there was another question. This question is because of the modern kind of education that we believe that life is only on the earth. But then we see such a huge creation. Once you lift your head up and hang it back like that, and then look at the sky at night, you see so many celestial bodies there, so many stars and planets. Then we believe that there is no life on all those various planets. In teleology of yoga, philosophy, it is said that nothing in this universe is useless. And then nothing in this universe is bereft of life. This will be quite intriguing for you because we believe that there is no life apart from the life on the planet Earth. We are quite convinced that there is no life on Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, moons, sun, stars. So it is our belief that there is only life on this planet. So we have very limited understanding of the concept of life. Our biology is having a tunnel view. Although it's a pragmatic science, it has a tunnel view. So it believes that there is only life on this planet and there can be no life elsewhere. But that is not true. According to metaphysics, according to philosophy in the sense, the system or science that divulges reality. The life is everywhere. In Patanjali's tenet, the whole material unfoldment or material manifestation, prakrutik manifestation, it is for bhogarthata and apavargarthata. Bhogarthata and apavargarthata of whom? Of the life, of the principle of life. And then the whole universe, infinite universe, which is spreading, as the astrophysicists, astronomers declare, that it is something like spreading, it is 16 billion light years and it is ever growing. And then it is not right to believe that there is no life there. Then why for it is there? The fact is the life is very much there too. But it is not the kind of life that we have on the planet. We have a kind of life on the planet that we need the temperate conditions which are on the earth. The 5 elements, their distribution that is available on the earth. Now, you don't get this distribution on, say, sun or, say, a star, which has temperatures ranging from 2000 degrees to 50,000 degrees of Celsius. So we won't have our kind of life. But however, there will be some kind of life everywhere. Then in our eschatology, it is postulated that we can be moving from lokas to lokas. We know that there are 7 planes. Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Maha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. Then Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala, etc. 7 infernal planes. Thus there are 7 infernal planes. There are 7 celestial planes. And then it is believed that in eschatology, or it is postulated rather, that one can move to all these various planes of creation. So your good deeds will take you to upper planes and your bad deeds will take you to lower planes. Sinister acts will take you to lower planes, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala. And good deeds will take you to Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Maha, Janaha, Tapaha, the 7 planes, up to Satyaloka. That means the life transmigrates to those planes. Now when it transmigrates to those planes, it doesn't have the same conditions to live which are available on the earth. The point is, life exists everywhere. One should wonder, when the life principle is defined in Bhagavad Gita, you're all familiar with those verses of Bhagavad Gita, which comes in 2nd chapter. Na jayate, mriyate, वा कदाचिन्नाय भूत्वा भवितावान भूयः अजो नित्य शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. That it doesn't have birth and death. It is eternally existing. And during the answer to the question in the last session, I told you about it. It's a metaphysical principle. There is nothing like birth and death for it. Then also, it has been defined in the same chapter, later in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, न चैनम क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः अछेद्यो अयम अदाह्यो अयम अक्लेद्यो अयम अशोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगतस्थाणुर अचलो अयम सनातनः. Why has it been described like that? That it cannot be cut, it cannot be burned, it cannot be wetted, it cannot be dried, etc. Why? And it is because of these conditions of that principle of life, the living principle, sentient principle, that if it cannot be burnt, what's the problem for that to be living on the sun? So it will take suitable manifestation to be on the sun because of the fact that it cannot be burnt. Be that 100 degrees to be that billion degrees, it is not going to be burnt. It will not have bodies like us. It will not be having requirement like we have in oxygen, etc. The temperate conditions for biological life on the planet. It will be different condition for the life to exist. So it's a different biology. It is not right to believe that there is no life on the sun. The fact of the matter is there is no life on the sun of the kind of this life that we have on the planet. Precisely this is the condition. It is not right to believe that there is no life on Mercury or there is no life on Venus. It is said that Venus has an atmosphere of carbon dioxide. Now we know that even on our planet there is a life species which lives on carbon dioxide, which thrives on carbon dioxide, which lives on carbon dioxide and which exhales oxygen. We know the botanical world. That's why we have got a modern kind of drive here, grow more trees. It is not that we have bounty for trees or we have some endowment for trees or we have some compassion for trees. It is utter selfishness. We know that we want oxygen, we need oxygen. We have tampered with the nature and now we feel the scarcity of oxygen and therefore we want to plant trees for our own purpose. It's not that we are generous and we are planting the tree. We are selfish and therefore we are planting trees. And that's a big drive that modern world has taken up. Anyway, so on Venus, if the botanical life lives on carbon dioxide on the globe, why not take it that there is some kind of life which lives on even Venus, for which carbon dioxide itself is oxygen. And then the temperature of 400 degrees itself is a moderate temperate condition. Because Venus has that temperature of 450 degrees. And therefore that must be a temperate and moderate condition for that kind of life. We will be perishing in that temperature. But there can be a life kind which thrives on such temperature. So is the case of Mercury, which has 350 degrees plus temperature. Or we say there is no atmosphere somewhere. No, that kind of atmosphere that we have on the planet is not there. It will have its own atmosphere, which is suitable to life there. So even on the moon, there is already a life. We are trying to take our kind of life on the moon, and therefore we are having missions, lunar missions, to take this kind of life on the moon. But it is not right to believe that there is no life on the moon. On the other hand, the modern science speaks about aliens. Now, aliens means beings from other planets. So, on one hand, they believe that there are lives on other planets. But with a biological perspective, they say there is no life there. Because our biology is terrestrial biology. So we have life in water, we have life on air, we have life on the earth, we have life in the air. That's the three kinds of life we have basically. But there can be a life which doesn't need water at all. The kind of life on the planet needs water. But there will be kind of life where different bodies will be taken. So in concept of Panchamahabhutas, there will be fiery body for beings on sun. So there can be fiery body, there can be airy body, there can be spatial body. We might think that there is no water outside the planet, but we definitely believe that there is space outside the planet. So the space is everywhere. There may not be water everywhere, but tell me where there is no space in this universe. So there might be something which thrives on space. This description has come in Vyasa's commentary when he describes the beings in different planes. Bhuvanajnanam Surya Samyamat in the 3rd chapter. He describes various kinds of beings. And even our mythologies have taught us so many kinds of beings. Manushyas, that is the human being. Then there are devas, there are rakshasas, there are yakshas, there are kinnaras, there are gandharvas. So, on different planes of universe, cosmos, there are different kinds of beings. So the life is everywhere. That might be ridiculous if I say today, because our idea about the life, if I say there is life on the sun, it would be ridiculous. But that is a fact of the matter. There will be beings with fiery body on sun. There will be beings on fiery body on all the stars. The temperatures of 50,000 degrees will be a moderate temperate condition for those beings where they are on a kind of star which is called blue star in astrophysics. And that is why Bhagavad Gita gives this definition that it cannot be burnt, it cannot be wetted, it cannot be dried. So the principle of life can go anywhere. It doesn't just need terrestrial earthy conditions. That is why in our eschatology we say life goes on the moon after death and then comes back. Life going to sun doesn't come back, but it goes there. So there are two paths in eschatology. The Dhumra Marga, Pitruyana Marga and Devayana Marga. Dhumra Marga and Dyuti Marga, light, illumination. That means the life goes there, can go there. So the point is, the life is everywhere. Principle of life goes anywhere and everywhere. So the kind of life there will be different. So that's another thing that the question was seeking enlightenment about whether the life is only on the planet. We have our kind of life only on the planet. Our kind of life will not be found on the sun and moon and Mars and Pluto and Mercury and Venus. They have their kind of life. So it is not right to believe that there is no life elsewhere. So that's the vision that Adhyatma gives, philosophy gives, philosophical subjects give. Eschatology tells us about it, that the life can travel. Life will go from here to various planes. If it is only going up to moon, it will come back. But if it goes up to sun, it will not come back, it will be liberated. So that's the Pitruyana Marga and Devayana Marga. So that was another question that was seeking an answer. That life is not only on the planet. And therefore it is not right to deem that whole creation, vast creation, is full of waste. Nothing is waste in the creation of archetypal mind. There is always a purpose for, not any purpose, purpose for life, purpose for principle of life. It is there in this infinite creation. That is why any kind of fruit is available for any kind of act performed by man, human being. So some fruitions will not be available here, then they go to heavens and have their fruits experienced. So that's very well we know that, somebody creates lots of virtues, punya sanchaya, then the fruit of it will not be available on the terrestrial plane. There is limited glory on the terrestrial plane. So then the life is taken to celestial plane, Swarga Loka. And then the fruits are enjoyed in Swarga. Some fruits cannot be enjoyed here for the sins that we commit. At the most, what is the punishment on the planet is death sentence. Nothing beyond it. But then there are certain sins performed by us which entail much more punishment, much more severe punishment than just death sentence or life imprisonment. That's a terminal condition in penal code. No punishment is going beyond it, can go beyond it. But there are karmas committed by mankind which entail more severe kind of punishments. That is why Kumbhipaka, etc. is mentioned, beautifully explained in Karma Vipaka Samhita, that will be sent to infernal planes and to suffer the fruits of our karmas, which cannot be experienced here. So punishment will not come on terrestrial plane. For that we are sent to Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala. And some virtues, the fruits cannot be had on the planet here. Because then that's why there is a Kalpa Vruksha there. Any desire will be fulfilling there. So life will be sent to celestial planes, Swargaloka, enjoy the fruits of their karmas and then come back again. So therefore there is purpose for life in any particle in this universe, from particle to huge stars, huge galaxies. Everywhere there is purpose for life. This is what philosophy divulges. You will have different kinds of experience and fruitions for your deeds. For some fruits you will have to go and settle on Venus. For some fruits you will have to go and settle on Pluto and Neptune, we do not really know what kinds of fruits are available there. They are all bearing fruits. Every planet in the solar system is bearing out fruit. Every body, celestial body in our galaxy is bearing out fruits. Every galaxy apart from our Milky Way galaxy is bearing out fruits, and our karmas are such that we need to go there and get the fruits, enjoy the fruits, and that's why there is that kind of life suitable to the condition there. And therefore, no part of creation is bereft of purpose for life principle. That is what the philosophy divulges. And that's why there is life everywhere. Life can go everywhere. So we will take different bodies. Today, if we have to go to moon, we have to carry oxygen cylinders. But in eschatology, when the life travels to moon, doesn't carry oxygen cylinder, no need. Because the life there will not live on oxygen but something else. What is available on the moon, it will thrive on what is available on the moon. Life will stay on sun, what is available on the sun, or whatever available on the various stars in various galaxies. And therefore, there is purpose in this creation. And basically, the life can go everywhere. Life is everywhere. So it will be naive to believe that life is only on the earth, on the planet, and nowhere else. Anyway, yoga has answers to all these questions. So we devoted 2 sessions for some questions to be answered. Now, just now, as I said, yoga has such a wisdom, such a knowledge that it reveals, divulges you the reality of this creation. The point is, we don't understand yoga in that perspective. We only think it is good for human well-being here and now. Goodness here and now. How many of you are practicing yoga for wellness hereafter? That is, after life, after this life. Nobody is doing yoga for life hereafter. But that is not allowed in Adhyatma. We'll have to do so many things for afterlife, not only for life. Today we are so materialistic that we just want this life to be happy. Satisfaction in this life. We want to have satisfaction, contentment in this life. We don't believe of any existence after the death. Life after life, we don't believe in it. But that is not true. What is true and what is to be believed are 2 different things. So yoga also thinks about all that, and therefore all these questions are answered. So therefore now I feel that we embark upon a point where we must really understand what yoga really is. Is it just that which is our idea of yoga? Is it only that which is our notion, which is our idea, which is our concept? Is that only the yoga? So now we will embark upon this kind of study as to what is really yoga, in the sense what really is in the text of Patanjali. Our yoga is get a mat, get some props and put on some sportswear and do some stretches and do some kriyas and do some movements and then take the hands on the nose and do some pranayam and close the eyes and do some meditation. That is our idea of Patanjali yoga. Everyone is finding parentage in Patanjali, whichever yoga is practiced on the planet today. Everyone claims that we owe our uh, kind of source of yoga. We find our source of yoga in Patanjali. Let's try to really understand what is in Patanjali Yoga. Is it only get a mat and put on sportswear and do something, some movements? Or is it just sit on a mat and then take the hands on the nostrils and do some pranayam, do something shvasayam, do some bhastrika, kapalbhati, brahmari, anuloma, pratiloma? What is found in the text of Patanjali? So, we will embark upon that as trying to take an overview of what Patanjali Yoga is offering rather than what we are embracing today. We are embracing what we think is good for us, what we think that we can be getting it and it can be advantageous. We are trying to embrace that. What is it that Patanjali is offering? What is really yoga in Patanjali's text? So we are going to have an overview on the contents of Patanjali's treatise. So that is enough for the time being. The session ends here. Namaskar all of you.